All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode on What the Sheet. So today's episode is probably not gonna be too long, but I always think that, and then the video ends up being 20 minutes. So what we're gonna be doing today is making some chair bottoms to retrofit some chairs for my fiance's or my wife's aunt. So what I did here was I actually took a piece of cardboard. Here it is. And went over to their house, and I was able to take chair bottoms off, and then I laid this piece of cardboard down, and then I just went around and traced the outline of the opening, and then I marked these are where all the brackets are that secure the bottom of the cushion already. And all this, all these pieces are going to do is provide some extra support in the center here, because on the bottoms that are already there, it just has a piece of plywood that kind of goes around the edge, so there's nothing in the center, so when you sit, your butt kind of sinks in. So what I'm going to do is create a bottom piece that's going to fit over the one that's already there, and then I just got to notch out the sides here for the bracket, so this will sit flush with the bottom of the existing cushion, provide a little extra support in the center, and that way nobody's butt's falling through it and they're a little bit more comfortable sitting on the chair. So this piece is 1/4-inch plywood, and this is going to be my template that I'm going to use to cut out the actual bottoms out of this 1/2-inch plywood. So as you can see, this isn't like the normal stuff that I buy. This is a little bit more rough. I think this is a AC plywood. So what that means is this side is a really nice kind of furniture grade side, and then this side is more of like your rough finish side. So this is kind of what you would see normally when you're looking at like construction plywood. It's just rougher, not as well finished, a lot of knots and gouges and stuff missing, versus this side is smooth, sanded finish, not a lot of knots, not a lot of big gouges missing out of the plywood. So what I'm going to be doing is, when I cut my templates, this will be the side that faces down. So if you were to look, for whatever reason, look underneath the chair, you'll see this side versus this side. So this side will go towards the cushion facing up and hiding that. And I'm not going to put any finish on these just because it's going underneath the chair, so it's not necessary. However, if the wife's aunt wants me to put a finish on to better match the stain in the furniture, I can do that, because it's closer to this. So this is the Kona all-in-one primer stain from Varathane, I do believe. So this is a single coat, this is 2 coats, and then it has a single coat of poly on the outside. And this is just regular pine board. So what I'm going to do is I got to make 10 of these. So the overall dimensions of this, it's roughly 17 inches from this corner to this corner, which is the widest part going this way, and then it's 14 or 15 inches from the bottom edge to the top edge. So I'm just going to kind of overcut some squares to get my 10 pieces out of these 2 sheets of 4x4 by 1/2 inch. And then once I get my 10, I'm going to use my rigid cordless router with a flush cut bit, and I'm going to tack nail this piece on, and then we'll go through and we'll actually use the router to get that shape to match as best we can. Or if that's not working as well, we could always use my track saw, which I actually might use, just because I can line my track up with the edge of this, and we'll still tack it down with pin nails. We'll line the edges up, and then we'll just run the track saw down and go all the way around, and then I can cut 3 or 4 of the 1/2 inch sheets all at once. So it should make this process go super fast. And then for this piece here, for the little notches where I got to cut out for the brackets, I think my plan originally was I was just gonna router out like a 1/4 inch groove on all the sheets of plywood, but since the brackets got to include the screw head, I think it'll be easier just to notch this out on all the sheets, because I'll still have plenty of screw surface on the pieces. So I just measured the brackets and add a little extra. So I'll just come through and notch these out, and I'll probably just use the jigsaw for that. And then once that's all said and done, that's kind of it. So I'm gonna get the table saw set up, cut my strips out so I can get my blank squares, and then I'll come back and I'll show you kind of how I'm going to set my design or my template up on the stacks of squares so I can run the track saw over it. All right, so I got my blanks cut. So I think there's 12 total. I only need 10, so I got 2 extra, which is good because if I mess any up, it'll give me a chance to fix that issue later. So what I did for my template here, I was originally going to use my pin nailer, but I couldn't find any of my 2-inch long pins, so I had to use my 18 gauge. Not the end of the world, it just means this will be a little bit more difficult to separate later. But, so what I did here is I layered up 3 of my blanks because that's as deep as my track saw will cut. So I got my blanks, my template, and then on top of that my track will go to get my edge, and then I'll just run the saw along here, turn it, do the edge, and just go all the way around. And that way I don't have to kind of fiddle fart with this on anything. If I had a corded router, like a bigger corded router, and a flush cut trim bit, I would probably do it that way. However, honestly, I think it'll be faster using the track saw, just because this isn't a finished piece. And by finished piece, I mean it's not going to be seen. So the edge doesn't have to be 100% perfect or 100% smooth or anything like that. So by using the track saw, it'll still give me a nice clean finish, but it won't give me maybe as accurate as a finish as if I were to use a flush cut trim bit with the template here. So like I said, what I did was I layered up 3 of my blanks. My template, I just put a couple nails in just to hold everything together so nothing's going to separate on me while I'm spinning it around and cutting it. And then once I get this cut, I'll peel my template off and I'll set these off to the side. And then I'll go back through and I'll get everything cut, and then I'll come through and I'll have to cut these out for the bracket pockets. And then once we do that, then it's just going back through all of these, and I'll probably do the same thing where I'll mount the template on, but instead of nailing it, I'll probably just, because I'll have this cut out, I'll just mount this, use a Sharpie or a pencil, mark out where I need to cut, and then I can just come in with a jigsaw and just cut out this notch, or these notches here, and then be done with it. So this shouldn't take more than 20-30 minutes to get the whole project done, which is awesome. And yeah, so I'll set you guys up. You can watch me cut this first go around on the template, kind of see how it all works, and then I'll show you kind of how well the track saw cuts on this plywood here, because I know a few of you guys have asked in the comments on the previous video when I did the review of this on how well this cuts. So I'll do that for you as well. so we got our first batch cut here. The edges, basically on the edges where I came through, there's a little bit of blowout on some of them. Not too bad. Everything looks good. I don't expect there to be a lot of tear out on this just because they're all sandwiched together. The bottom sides, I'm not seeing any tear out on any of them, which is good. The nails did go through a little bit, which is fine. So now we just got to pry this beast off. Let's see if I can't do this. I want to pry this off while keeping the nails in there. Perfect. Alright. So, as you can see, those 18 gauge nails are still sitting in there, which is good because I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter, but I really want to keep each group together. That way when I come back through to put on to cut out the templates for the brackets, I don't have to do it individually. I can keep them, still do it as a big batch with the jigsaw. Just come through and do it that way. Just make it a little bit faster for me. But yeah, so kind of as expected, the saw cut really good. Not a lot of tear out. Just some minor stuff on the edges here. This side's a little rough, but not the end of the world. Just going over it with your fingers kind of breaks up some of those little fuzzies. And a little bit of light sanding, and all your edges will be good. But do keep in mind though, I do have a Diablo, I think it's a 62, they're fine tooth saw blade in there, so it's not the standard one that comes with the kit. But like I said, with basically any tool you buy, you want to usually you want to buy a new saw blade to start with, just because the ones that come with the tool usually aren't the greatest. But we're not here to talk about that saw today. So I got these first 3 done. I'm going to go through, do the rest of my stack here, get them all made, and then I'll go through and I'll notch this out with my jigsaw, so that way once everything's made I can come back through and cut out the little cutouts for the brackets. And I'll catch you guys when we're all done. Alright, so when I was editing this video, I realized I forgot to show you guys how I was cutting out these notches, because I know I said I was going to. So I think originally I said I was going to use the jigsaw to do all the notching out, which I did for I think one group of 3, and it works out okay, but it leaves a really rough, let's see if I can get a little closer here. So when I use the jigsaw, what I do is I come in straight, do both sides, and then I have to come in at an angle, kind of curl over to the corner here. So this piece will drop out, and then I kind of have to work my way in. And what was happening was when I had the stack of 3 of these boards together, just because of the way that my jigsaw is set up, the blade was deflecting kind of in like this. So the top board would be cut out pretty good, but then the bottom board would end up being almost like a 1/4 inch thicker. So, and then like this backside would be really rough, and I didn't really like that. So then what I was doing was I was using my Japanese pole saw, which these things are awesome, and if you're gonna do any kind of finer woodworking or want some really nice detailed cuts, get one of these, or I think this one was like 20 bucks, 25 bucks on Amazon, and they sell different versions. So they have ones that got 2 blades on it. These are really handy and they cut super fast. Another technique I was using was I was using my Japanese pole saw, and I'd go down the line on each side the same as I would with the jigsaw. Gives me a finer cut, finer saw curve, and not as much kind of, it gives me a smoother cut as well. And then I would finish it with, this is a spiral upcut bit on my rigid router. I think this is a 1/4 inch bit, and I just have it basically full depth. And when I was cutting through 3 boards, I would basically get through basically 1.5 boards, and then I just flip the piece over and do the same thing. And by me going through with the jigsaw or my Japanese saw and cutting my lines, I knew where kind of to guide the edge of my blade or the bit around. And then for the backside, for the top, I would just go as close as I can along this line. Like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect just because it's a hidden furniture piece. So when I do the top, I go do my best to kind of follow this guideline here, and then when I flipped it over, as I was cutting, I would just look underneath and just do my best to kind of closely match it. And then once the bulk of the material was out, I just go through and kind of touch it up with the bit, and that seemed to work out pretty good. I was a little nervous that this cordless router wasn't going to have enough power to actually do a deep cut like this, but I don't know if it's just the bit that I got's a solid bit, or if just cutting through plywood was not as hard as I thought it was. But this thing ran through it like a champ, no issues. I don't think I ever stalled it out, which is really surprising. But that seemed to be kind of the best method for cutting these notches out, was the Japanese pole saw, the kind of the sides here, and then just using the router to go through and just notch the rest of it out. Basically just go in along the side here, get to the back, and then basically once I got to the back and came across, the bulk of it would just fall right out, which made it super easy to do and gave me a good enough finish to where, you know, it works for me. And I've installed a few of these already. I was doing it during the Super Bowl, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have to take these back and trim them down anymore. But they all fit, but I do have to do some adjustments with the brackets because not all the chairs brackets are in the same spot. So I'm having to, instead of basically test fitting every single piece and coming back and custom cutting every one, I'm just moving the brackets over to fit where these holes or these notches are already cut. And yeah, so what I'll do is I'll kind of show you how I've kind of made my own system on cutting these out, and then you can kind of modify it for whatever you're working on. But I think this system works pretty good for something like this. So whether you're doing cabinetry, making drawers, or anything where you want to notch something out and you don't necessarily want to use a chisel and you want to kind of make quick work of it, this seems to be a good method. So I'm going to use my Japanese pole saw, like I said, and then my 18 volt cordless router from Ridgid with I think it's a 2 amp hour battery on it, not a big battery. All right, so I got my pole saw, and so the big difference between a Japanese pole saw and like your standard kind of American saw is kind of in the name. So an American saw, it cuts on the push. So if this were an American saw, I would be getting most of my cutting action when I'm pushing forward, and that's why American saws have a different, you know, almost like a pistol grip style handle, and the blades are thicker, versus a Japanese saw, it cuts on a pull stroke, and so you have smaller teeth and you're able to have a thinner blade. I mean, this blade is maybe like a 1/16 of an inch thick, or maybe even thinner than that. So you can get thinner curves because you don't need as much rigidity in the metal of the blade, because since you're pulling it, you're not putting as much force on like the leading edge of the blade, which is nice. So these are really good. You'll see these a lot if you watch a lot of other woodworking channels, guys that do custom work or fine furniture work. They like to use these Japanese saws for small pieces like this, just because they give you a smaller curve and they cut really fast. So I'll kind of show you here. So you start your cut like you would with a normal saw. So I like to set my blade on the edge and then use my thumb to kind of guide the first couple of strokes. With this, it cuts so fast that one stroke is enough, and it already cut me in, probably about 1/4 of an inch. So then you just continue. And there, I've actually gone past the line. So I'll do the same thing on this side. Get my blade close, thumb, do one full pull to get a nice good groove started, and then just pull. All right, and then we'll grab my router. Like I said, this has got a 1/4 inch spiral upcut bit, so that means when it's cutting, it's going to pull it, the chips and sawdust, and kind of pull it up towards the router. They make spiral downcut bits. I'm not really sure why you would use one or the other. I think Ron Polk, he's got a good YouTube channel. He goes over, I think he has a video where he goes over the difference between the upcuts and the downcut bits and the different uses for each one. But I just have so for my settings on the router, I just got it maxed out at 7, so it spins as fast as it can. Battery's got enough juice in it. I'm just gonna do this one notch so you can kind of see kind of how this works. So we'll start the router, and we're gonna make sure that the bit has enough space, or that's actually cut. I'll take you off my noodle here, if I can find the button to release you. There we go. So you just want to make sure that your router's set up so that you have enough of the, for one, that your cutting edge is actually grabbing on the top, and that you're going to be able to cut all the way through your material on the bottom. Otherwise you have to make multiple passes. If I was doing let's say a more detailed piece, or if I was gonna, let's say, put a groove in a piece of plywood for a T-track, I would probably do it in multiple passes. So I would maybe only take out like a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 inch, basically like a layer of this plywood at a time, and do multiple passes. That way I get a nice smooth finish. I'm not overworking my router, and it lets me kind of slowly walk up to that final depth that I'm looking for. But in this case, since it's, like I said, it's not fine furniture, it's not going to, it shouldn't be seen by anybody except for me. It doesn't really matter too much what the finish is. I still want it to be a nice clean finish. I don't want to be super rough, but like I said, it's not going to be seen, so it doesn't matter all that much. So I'm going to throw you back on my noodle here, and then we're going to fire this up, and then we'll just cut this out. This shouldn't take more than like 5 to 10 seconds. Boom, done. That's it. That's all she took. So as you can see, like, doesn't give you quite a square edge on the finish, which is fine. It just has to be enough room to get that bracket in there. And the brackets, I think when I put these in, I have about a 1/4 inch all the way around for the brackets, which is nice. And then, like I said, I've also got to adjust all the brackets on the chairs because they're not all set up the same like I was hoping they were. But yeah, I think that's gonna actually conclude this video now. I've covered everything. I'm not gonna show you what they look like installed on a chair, just because it's not really necessary. And the next project I have will be the ladder shelf blanket ladder thing. That's gonna be the 1x8 and those 2x4s. I got to make 2 blanket ladder shelves. They're going to be roughly 6 feet tall once they're leaned up against the wall, and they're each going to have 4 shelves on it. So each one of those 1x8 boards will get cut down into roughly 2-foot sections, and those are going to make the shelves up. And then those are going to be for holding pictures, and those are also going to my wife's aunt's place, which is where these chairs bottoms are going. That video hopefully will be out next week when it warms back up, because if you can't see, my garage door is all frosted up, because right now it is currently, let's see if it pulls up on my phone there, -8 degrees outside, and it's supposed to get down to like -25 tonight. So hopefully once it warms up I can get some more stuff done. But that's going to conclude this video officially, I think. Yeah, just keep an eye out for the ladder shelf video, and then my mom's garbage cabinet. I'm also going to be working on that here soon, since I have the materials for it, and I should have a little bit more time to get it done. And then I'll have to find some more projects to get done around here to keep the content flowing for you guys. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.